Why do we feel lighter when we're accelerating downwards in an elevator and feel heavier when we're moving up? I always wondered this as a kid, but it turns out it's an easy question to answer with some basic principles of physics. Namely, Newton's second law of motion, which says that force is equal to mass times acceleration. Now, when you're standing still on the ground, there are only two forces present. The normal force that's keeping you up, which is what we call the force that the ground applies on you, and the force of gravity, which is holding you down. There are a couple other forces at play in more complicated scenarios, but for the purposes of why we're staying still and not sinking down or floating up, those are the only two relevant ones. People often think that an elevator must be more complicated, but really it's exactly the same. You can see, if you draw out a diagram, that there is only one force up and one force down. Normal force up, gravity down. If we set those on the force side of the equation, we know that somehow normal force up minus gravity down must be equal to our mass times our acceleration. If we're standing still on the ground, our acceleration is equal to 0, which means that given our mass is not 0, normal force minus gravity must equal 0. If we do some algebra to move that to the other side of the equation, we know that that means our normal force, so again, the force the ground exerts on us, must be exactly equal to the force of gravity, i.e., the force pulling us down into the ground. If we set those equal, we get 0 on the other side, and we know that we're staying still. Somehow, though, when we're in an elevator, we still have only those two forces, but the other side of our equation changes. We're moving upwards, and our speed is changing, which means that our velocity is changing and we have acceleration, non-zero acceleration, whether we're moving up or down in an elevator. To give the example of when we're moving upwards, somehow our normal force minus gravity must now be equal to a positive number, not 0, to account for the fact that we have positive acceleration. Which means, since gravity can't change, the only possible explanation is that our normal force is somehow increasing. Turns out, what we think of as our own weight, i.e. what we feel holding us down, is actually not some abstract thing. It's the normal force that we're feeling. So when we feel like we're getting heavy in an elevator, it's because in order for us to accelerate up while gravity pulls us down, our normal force must be increasing. Now, the other important part of this is that if we look on a scale, we'll actually see that our weight is increasing in an elevator because it has to do with our acceleration as we move up and the normal force that is applied to us. And I think that's a really fun way to see physics in our everyday life and explain why we feel that way.